All right, I just got up out of bed, had my breakfast, and now my nose is starting, my sinuses are starting to open up, and I have phlegm going down my throat. So please persevere. I want to redo this video. Now, I finished the transformer, putting it back together. I used four nice bolts, and I'm noticing, hey, look at that. Two of the bolts are one type, and the other two are a different type. Oh wait, one bolt is different. Okay, I got to fix that. That'll bother me. But anyway, it worked out nice. And I used, to clean the edges that were rusted of the laminations, I used this eraser. Nice and gentle. It only took off the rust. Now you could, on tougher rust, this is a brass bristle brush. You could use this. Now on these cases, the top and stuff, it has some really heavy rust. And or we call them the clamshells. I use Scotch-Brite. And Scotch-Brite's like a real Scotch-Brite, and it says Scotch on it. It's like a fiber, almost like a filter, and it's got impregnated grit in it, so it will remove rust without messing up the steel. See, that's what you want. You want the tool to take the rust off and leave the metal behind. Okay. And the reason I redid this transformer is when I went on eBay and got the sticker shock, and I'm looking at rusted transformers, and I could tell on a couple pictures, you could tell they took some sandpaper and they sandpapered it for the picture. Okay. Now, what I would tell you to do, if you got light rust, um, just spray paint over it. Black spray paint. Okay. It's not going to affect the transformer. I did tests and everything. I did a lot of reading, and there's a lot of really bad information on the internet, especially those groups. I don't know if they're senile old men that sit in there that just want to get their name up there in a message, but they make stuff up, and then other people repeat it, and then there's no stopping that. I went through that with the CNC stuff. I created CNC machines that could be built for under $200, and I was using aluminum channel that came off storefronts from the store, not from a regular house. And it would get on the conferences, and the person says, it's window framing, but it's not really window framing. It's window framing for a store. And then it went off in all different directions. They stole some of my best ideas. One guy rotated a couple things a few degrees. Um, he copied my machine, and then he allowed people to have the plans for free if you join this one group. Okay, that's the stuff you run up against in the world. When you do something really cool that no one ever thought about doing, you got people that say, I've seen that before, even though I haven't. And then one guy, I went after him. He kept saying, I've seen that before. I narrowed it down. I said, show me where you've seen it before. He gives me the link to my website. That's how stupid people are. And they run around on the internet and they repeat stuff they heard that's not been checked out. And then you got the voice of reason, the reality guys. If you read them enough messages, you'll come up with the guy that says they don't use paper, mica, or shellac or varnish anymore. They use the oxide of the metal. It took a while before I found that guy. Okay, because I know how many of these transformers I've taken apart. What did I say, 500? Might be more. You know, I sit there and watch television and scrap out transformers and then take the copper down to the recycling center and get some money. So over the years, man, I had them. I would just collect these stupid things, even if they were smoked, and they all came apart the same way. And then you go read on it, it's like mica in between the laminations, paper. Never saw that. And then varnish. Okay, I don't know. Maybe some of them were. I didn't notice the varnish was on so thin, and it did come apart. I don't know, but this one has oxide. I showed you in the last video. But one of the people in the comments said, "Is it possible to go in a transformer and change it?" Yes, yes. There's articles online. You could get all the Popper electronics that you want. They're all there for free in PDF form, and they had articles, and people would rewind them just to get the voltage they really needed. See, back in the day, people were really resourceful. And a lot of the guys would collect transformers and say they were going to rewire them, and they never did. Those are the people that were around me. I told you that one engineer on my street, it took 2 dumpsters and garbage night for 2 years to get rid of his crap. Okay? He lived across the street. The back of his house was across the street from a TV repair shop. So he'd see a chassis over there. He'd walk across in the dark and bring it back into the house. He was a hoarder. And he'd tell me, he'd point to stuff in his cellar, and it was packed, absolutely packed. And he was telling me, I'm going to get this. I mean, didn't do any of it. 3 days before he died, I went to visit him, and I was talking to him. He really, in his mind, he really still believed he was going to get to all the projects. And then he just died, and they threw all the stuff out. But his wife come up one time, and she's bawling me out. Picture this. I'm out in the front of my house, and I'm putting stuff out in the garbage. And this is stuff I've scrapped. And steel, I can't really get any money. And she pulls up the car, and she gets out, and she starts cackling at me that every time you put stuff out in front of your house, my husband comes up and takes it and brings it home. She's yelling at me. And the other time she did it to me was after I sold my house. I went back to the neighborhood to get my mail from another neighbor, and she come up to me and she complained about the people that bought my house were making too much noise. And I said, they just moved in, and they're working late at night to get it ready so they can move in. And but they're keeping me up. And she's like a couple houses away. And I said, well, you basically did the same thing when you moved in your house. Well, that was then. Oh, it's different now. But these people were always very cordial. But when you really get down to brass tacks with some of these people, they were freaking insane. And I had them around me. And my father warned me a couple times about the engineer guy. He goes, he's strange. He's freaking strange. And then one day I was going through the tapes. My dad had reel-to-reels. And I found this one tape, and it was a guy's voice on it reading numbers. And I said, who is that? And he goes, oh, that's the engineer down the street. He borrowed the tape recorder, and he went around reading numbers off stuff at work. And I'm like, holy shit. And I'm listening to it. It's not like 897, we got 15 of them. It was just number after number after number. So anyway, I had mentioned that to that guy. What was that? He goes, oh, can I have that? Can I? See? And then he would borrow VHS tapes from me and then say, I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep that. So a lot of my stuff, after he died, went out in the garbage. And his wife asked me, do I want any of that? I didn't get involved. Because once you put your hand on that, then there's going to be more rules they're going to make up. I grew up in a neighborhood that once they sucked you into something, they keep making new rules up to keep you working on it, to finish it, because their children are hiding somewhere, okay? And that's where I grew up. I look back now, I sit here and I look back, and I'm like, boy, did I get used. And that's the way I was. I was a person always trying to help people out and get to the reality, get to the truth, and show people, but it doesn't do any good. I found that with the CNC. No matter what I taught people, there were the undoers out there. And they would get people so confused, they were afraid to build anything. And there are people that just collect stuff. Now, I mentioned certain parts I was buying on eBay. And then I saw this guy, he was buying everything I was buying. Like he was going to become me. And it was amazing. Anyway, I won't go into that deep, but there's some strange people out there. And the more you get involved with people, the more you realize you very rarely meet anyone that's actually going to really help you. They all want to be what you are, or they want to undo you. And that's why with the trolls now, when I get hit with trolls, I just delete the message. They go around on YouTube and they insult people. They hit FranLab, and Shango has a different way of handling them. And I went looking, and there's this one guy they pick on. I think it's the 8-bit guy. They pick on him really bad. And I emailed him something. He asked for help, and I emailed him the answer to something, and he never replied. So that was one of his tricks to get people. Well, anyway, there's a lot of strange people out there. But I just want to tell you, after I got the sticker shock, I said, maybe let me see what's involved in this. Like I said, I took 500 of these apart. But, I want to tell you, that guy, you just dip each one of these laminations in was it shellac or varnish before you put it back together. You won't be able to get it back together. Each one of these will get thicker, and there's only a certain amount of space in there to slide these back in. Also, when you varnish them, it's going to be really hard to slide them. Okay, that's how you sit there, and once you've done a project fully, you realize the bullshit artists. Okay, and then we had this guy at work, Joe Padner, and he was a know everything, know nothing guy. And after you have done the project, if you asked him some questions, he couldn't answer them. And I would say, if you did it, you should. He'd do that. He wouldn't even say words. It would just be well. And when he would leave, the other guys would say to him, "He's bullshit. He's pure bullshit." And that's what's out there, man. I was like, I could take 500 of these apart. It doesn't mean I can rewire one of these or put it back together. Or, I was like looking for the varnish. I'm like, I never saw varnish in them. I've seen varnish on the outside. They coat the thing so for moisture. But I'm like, this is Wikipedia. It's got to be right? Paper between the laminations, mica between the laminations, and what was the other? Varnish. So maybe a microwave oven transformer is built differently. But that's not what the people in the conferences were asking. They were asking about one of these. Okay? And that's what you get on these conferences. Apples and oranges. You're talking about apples, and the guy's giving you answers for oranges. Okay? And then if you stick it out and you read through the conferences, you will find somebody that steps in there and does it. And then you also the people, I worked for 50 years and I blah, 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 blah. And then that guy's always a bullshitter. Okay? But to make his bullshit better, I worked with them for 25 years. And that messes up the conference because the real smart person might not give you the real answer. And I had some emails going back and forth to a few people. And they said they won't sit in those conferences anymore because you tell someone how to exactly do it and how it's done. And now you're being bombarded by the bullshit artists. And the bullshit artists are so good at lying, because all they have to do is sit in a chair and make this stuff up. You take a transformer apart and then, you're there with an eraser. Okay, you picture me taking all those, you saw them in the last one, and then take an eraser. Look at the marks in the eraser from running it back and forth. There's some on this side, and I use this a little bit. I use this on the clamshells, work very good, and then put it back together. Okay, it's not hard. It's not hard. And I painted the caps, and then I'll be painting this. Right now it's real windy outside, so I can't. I'll be painting the neighborhood, but I just happen to have a can of Krylon black, and this transformer will look nice in a project in the future if it ever gets used. This could end up in a dumpster. Okay, I told you that. When I die, if I don't leave a will, this shit's going to end up in a dumpster, and that's the way it's going to go. And if you go look at Shango 66, Shango 66, he brings this stuff home. People invite him into the house of a guy that was either a ham operator or a radio guy, and they say, here, we'll give you this for $10 or that, and he loads the car up and he's bringing this stuff back. But he's in California, and at some point, if he has to move, and he can't take that stuff with him, he's got to pay to have that disposed of properly. You're not supposed to just throw electronic equipment in the garbage. Okay? Here, you put a vacuum cleaner out for garbage, and you got to pay $30 and they'll take it. And they come and they take it, and they take it to a recycling center, and they take the plastic apart and send that to one landfill. The metal gets recycled. But right now, plastic really doesn't get recycled. I think someone said, of all the plastic ever made, only 8% has been recycled. A lot of it's floating around in the ocean. It's a shame. But anyway, electronic equipment is considered toxic. Okay? And some older transformers, you go to open them up, and there's tar poured in them. Some of the television ones, the old black and white TV ones. And as a kid, I used to dig through them, and it would take a while to get the tar off everything in order to get to that core I showed you. And when you cut that core, there's turns of winding on it, one next to each other, and it comes off like a spool. It really, and I used to have these in my box. I have a box of copper wire, and I'd leave them coils cut, those cores, and then I'd go in. I told you with a micrometer, and it would say you need like number 18 gauge wire, and it's points blah 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 blah. You go in here and you take your micrometer and you mic it, and then you bring out the core, you lay it on your bench, and then you unravel off the amount of copper wire you want. It's enamel wire, enameled copper, and then you have to clean it up because some of the on the windings there is a varnish on the windings. So as you're undoing the windings, it either has wax on it or varnish. I'm wondering if these guys are mixing the varnish up from the windings, and that's to prevent the windings from vibrating and you hear hum. Now this type of transformer with the 4 bolts. And that one bolt's different. Oh, but this, you can tighten this down and it won't hum. These, if you put one of these back, this frame that goes over it, or clamp, if you don't get that tight, you'll hear it humming if you take it apart and put it back together. Because I did this one that way before you went with the 4 bolts. I tried reusing that piece of crap thing that the guy had done. But this came off a command radio that the guy had. He put the 5-volt winding of this in series with the 6-volt winding to get approximately 12 volts. And he turned the command radio into an AM tuner. And there's one of these. It comes with a, let me get in the frame. These come in the frequency of the AM broadcast band. So people bought these and they turned them into AM tuners. And they made them wide bandwidth AM tuners for high fidelity, and then they had an FM tuner next to it. Early stereo in New Jersey, like WPAT had an AM station and an FM station, and one channel was on the AM and one channel was on the FM, and that went on for maybe a couple years. And my dad built a AM tuner from scratch, and his FM tuner was a Heathkit. And we had it on, and we used to tune it in. And they only broadcast certain hours at night in stereo. And then all of a sudden, the multiplex became the buzzword. And someone gave my dad a multiplexer, but he just kept it. He kept saying, "I have a multiplexer. I have a multiplexer." I never hooked it up. Okay, and that's when he started doing that. He got a TV repair shop with my uncle for a while, and then after that, it became. He didn't finish a lot of his projects. It got really bad. I'm going to get to it. And here I am coming behind him, younger, finishing his projects. My mother goes, "Could you finish that?" And my father, and in his mind, he'd sit in this chair. A couple times I'd say something. He goes, "I finished that." I don't know, with his reality. And then looking back when he got older, just before he died, he took a roll of 35 millimeter film, and then he took it out of the camera and then wrapped the film around the cartridge. And he just wouldn't believe me that film was ruined. So he took it over to get it developed, and there was nothing on the film. Then he was buying rolls of film and getting confused which ones were used, and taking them for development, and there was nothing on them. And then he was blaming the developer. I think he was going senile. Now that I'm sitting here thinking some of the wacky stuff he was doing before he died. It was getting quite intense. And you don't realize it when you live with someone when they're starting to show Alzheimer's. And I know I made it to 70, and I consider myself fairly sharp. But I caught myself the other day getting Boston confused with Buffalo. I'm telling this guy about the snow in Boston. And he's arguing with me, but he was wrong, but I had the wrong name of the wrong. I was saying Boston. But the reason I know about Buffalo and the snow they get was my father's sister lived there. And my dad would always call her up when it snowed really, really bad back in those days and see how she was doing. That was like a reason to call his sister up. Okay, because back in those days, a phone call to Buffalo, I think it was like $30 for a few minutes, whatever it was. It was sad. how much it costs. All right, I just want to show you. I did finish it. Just have to paint it, and it'll go in my collection of transformers. And you know, like that guy mentioned, could you? I kept thinking, no, I could take this apart and rewire it for. I need 24 volts AC to light the tubes on a command radio. There's a Hammerland pan with a transformer, capacitor, and there's something. Oh, and a 5U4, whatever. And it's a drop-in power supply for a BC348. I've never seen one for sale, and it uses this size transformer. Okay, and this is a unique size. This is like a cheesy organ or a crappy little AM radio, maybe a phonograph player. This is small. The next size is just a little bit bigger, and I think that's it. All right, that's it.